This session is on IEP. This session is going to be somewhat interactive. It's an overview of IEP. Obviously, in 1 hour, IEP is hard to encapsulate, right? All the things that you have to do with IEP is going to be a lot. It's one of the major things that you'll do as a special education teacher, but it should not get in the way of providing good instruction. And so we've been talking a lot about instruction this morning with Anita Archer, and you'll see some elements of that as we go through. One of the things that I like to say, my name's Denny Paul May. I was introduced earlier. Of course, Brenda Combs is here. She is our lead in compliance. We work closely together. We do a lot of review of folders. And one of the things that we say in compliance is it's not a problem until it's a problem, okay? Until someone comes looking at it. And so what we're hoping today to do is to give you an overview of the things that you need to really focus on and some impressions from the extensive amount of folders that we review every year, okay? And we're going to start off with an activity. I love activities, okay? In my transition training, if you've ever had my transition training, I put a picture of bunk beds, and that's a reference to Step Brothers movie, where you put bunk beds in so you have more room for what? Activity. That's that. You have more room for activities. Yes, yes. So we'll do a little choral response, but right now, I want you to focus on this acronym. If you ever are in a world where acronyms are used, I don't know of any other vocation that you're going to have more acronyms to know. Okay? So you make, as a professional educator, as a professional special educator, make it your business to know acronyms. So I'm going to give you your first acronym today, okay? IEP, okay? And I want you to break that down. And I want you, I'm going to number you guys like we always do. So we got to try it here. 1, 2, 1. 1, 2, 1. That's opposite, isn't it? No, you were 1 over there, weren't you? Yes. 1, 1, 2, 1. 1, 2, 1. 1, 2. Okay? And so the engagement cycle that we use, and I'll click in here. Is this, and I jumped ahead. I also have the learning targets there, the learning objectives. I jumped ahead of that just a little bit. Where we're going today, what we're trying to accomplish. Remember when we talked about elements of explicit instruction, we always want our learners to know what we hope to accomplish. What's the goal of the lesson today? So these are some of the goals that we could talk about here. But I want to more importantly get to this engagement activity. So we're going to think in a silo. We're going to think about IEP, and we're going to write the letters IEP down, and we're going to say what each word means. Okay? And we're going to try to the best of our ability to make some sense of what those words mean. Okay? So let's go ahead and do that in a silo. So we're doing that on our own. We're not looking at our neighbor's paper. We're not talking to anybody right now. We're just working on our own to develop that acronym. What first define or write down each word, and then a little definition in your own words. And then ones are going to tell twos what you come up with. And then after some discussion, you're going to go back and rewrite your answer. Your answer is going to grow when you talk to your colleagues, hopefully. A big part of research says that we put students in mixed ability groups for reasons. We don't just pull all the special needs students over to the corner. We put them in mixed ability groups. We parallel teach. We go into classrooms where we expect these students to learn from one another. You're going to have different levels of experience. You're going to have different levels of background. You're going to have different prior experiences. And so we want you to break down IEP. We want you to talk to one another about it. We want you to rewrite it. We want you to bullet point. We want you to learn to summarize this, okay? So we're going to have you summarize at your table. And as you can see, right behind you, you've got an in-person Jamboard. And right behind you, you guys have an in-person Jamboard. You guys back here have an in-person Jamboard. See, Larry, Shell, I've got to put my live show on the age here. Ricky Shepard. All right. So you guys have yours there. You have one on your table, okay? Or you can use this one over here, okay? This one's a little hard to use and this one's a little hard to use. I probably should give them another one too. So let's work on that. I'm gonna close my mouth and let you focus in a silo by yourself, work on the IEP, okay? And then we'll work on putting those bullet points up in the in-person Jamboard. And I may call on anyone in this classroom to stand and deliver by your in-person Jamboard, okay? Probably easier to just do it at the table and then hold it up, okay? Don't have a lot of walk. These are collapsible devices. And I'll tell you what else. One of the things that Nita Archer talks about is using your whisper voice. Rachel probably wishes I would use my whisper voice because we're really close quarters here. They don't have to try to remember that because I have that coaching teacher voice that just used to throwing that voice out there. Okay, so I have to be reminded of brain. So, and then those elements of explicit instruction that we talked about, walk around, look around, talk around, how are we doing over here? You see, I'm looking, I might be taking data today. I might be seeing, do you have it? Have you broken it down? Have you explained it? So once you get that, then ones are going to tell twos, right? Ones are going to tell twos what their answer is. I want some engagement and we should probably be moving about to that point right now. Okay? So remember, a perky pace, not a pokey pace. We want to have a brisk pace in our lessons. We want to teach from our feet, not from our seat. Brenda says I don't have a seat to teach from, so I just work on my feet all day long, right? That's why I don't have a seat to work from. Yes. So, anybody have any questions about any of these? Anybody struggle with any of the words? Okay, so at this point, one of the things that I want you to think about with this type of engagement strategy is modes of learning. We've got some visual information up here. Here's another acronym for you. Just jot this on the side of your paper. VARK. V-A-R-K. Okay? Visual, auditory. You're going to get a lot of auditory because I never shut up. Okay? Watch them snicker over here. Okay? Say no me. Then the third one is reading and writing, and the last one's kinesthetic. Now we're getting ready to use our kinesthetic, tactile, working with our information, and we're going to jam it on that Jamboard, okay? So I'd like you guys, whether you're sitting at a table and working on this Jamboard, if you're at the point where you've summarized your information, I would like for you to put your sticky note, your bullet points on your sticky notes, put that on your Jamboard. So you guys are going to you're going to get on your feet and go right back here. You guys are getting on your feet and go right here. You guys are going to stand up at your table and get ready to display that. Back this and turn it around here on your back. All right. And stand up. And stand up. No, I want IEP. Yeah, don't worry about BART. I was just making a point. Yeah, don't worry about BART. Everybody put your sticky note up. Everybody go to the board. Everybody go. All right, so go up there and stand. Go up there and stand. And remember, you're right next door to somebody. Okay. Okay, so this is going to work out perfect. In spite of my plans. Right. Okay, so you guys stand up. So that movement kinesthetically sometimes would allow students to process the information a little bit better. It might even be beneficial for them to stand up while they're working, stand up while they're writing. Okay?
Yeah, right. You gotta give your
One of those learning cards didn't look right. Okay, so we'll be able to get through everything, let's go ahead and get started. And back here, I'm going to start back here with Ricky Shepherd. And I want Ricky Shepherd to talk to us about the I word. Talk to us about the I word. This is it seems pretty straightforward, but let's talk about it a little bit. Everybody listen.
Individualized. I stand for individualized.
Okay.
Which means it's,
Hey, hold up.
individualized means it is specific to that person
Okay.
that it is intended for.
Great job. And if you come to our session on 101 later in today we're going to have a big discussion about FATE, another acronym, and we're going to talk about the Andrew case. And one of the things that the Andrew case established in IEP was that it has to be individualized. It has to meet the student where they are in light of their unique circumstances. Okay? So you said, what in your own words, tell me again what you said about individualized.
That was a one-time deal. I
Oh,
don't remember.
yeah, come on.
It's individualized just means it's education that is just for that specific person, that is designed for that person.
Yes. Would you have anything to add,
No.
my man?
You're doing great.
No, anything at all, individualized, anything you can think of, nothing?
It's just a specific student.
Specific student, right? Unique circumstances, really, what do we know about our students? Each and every one of them are a little different, aren't they? So while we can have some commonality and while we have IEPs that are designed around the standards, we have to work on intentionally finding that specially designed instruction that's going to attack the problem for that individual. What does the E part mean to you guys? Let me get that name.
Learning,
Jessica.
learning, growing, doing, executing, school studies.
Great. And from the last session, do you remember when I was talking about moving information from short term to long term? Making it permanent so that when you teach those words in that classroom, you teach that kid those new words, they can go down to the next classroom and use those words. Okay? So education is all about learning, right? Very good job. Very good job. What about that last word? We all seem to struggle a little bit. Did we not? Do you recall me walking around, looking around, talking around? I was able to discover that there was a little inconsistency in that last word. Do you want to tell us what the last word was over there, young lady?
Okay, so program, right?
Yes, program,
Right.
yes.
Activities designed for a spatial area, and then plans and goals and how we execute the learning.
Okay,
So it's activities designed for a specific area, right?
okay.
Like the
And
program.
we're gonna, as we go through this, the remainder of the session, we're gonna talk about the individual parts of the plan or the program. It's really not a plan, it's a program, okay? So you wanna think about a program doesn't happen, a plan happens one time in an event, okay? A program happens all the time. It encapsulates everything that goes in with that student. Now, let me point out that this program is designed to assist the student in meeting the standards, okay? Ensuring that they get access to the curriculum and that they make progress, okay? So your students need to make progress, they need to have access to the overall curriculum, but the IEP is layered on top of core instruction. Your students are regular ed students first, and they have an IEP as an assist tool to guide them through some of those tough spots, okay? The purpose we're going to talk about, okay? Don't want to go too far. We can sit back down, okay? Great job. So you see how sometimes there's this concept in psychology called the Mandela Effect. And some of you, or a lot of you, wrote the word plan. And I'm not sure that at some point in my life I thought it was an IE plan, individualized education plan. It is a program. And the difference is that it's not an event, it's a process. It's a process as we design. We have to know how to synthesize information, determine where a student is currently working, where they're supposed to be working and what we're going to do special for them to get them to that place. Okay? So, good job. Good job. This is kind of how the thing's going to go today. Just a minute ago, I pointed you to some objectives. I'm going to go back to those objectives. So, understanding the purpose of the IEP, explaining how the IEP supports learning, reviewing IEP considerations, understanding the links between the IEP process and graphic, and then we're going to look at those individual pieces, okay, as we move through. Now, there is this thing from Kentucky Department of Education, and I'll tell you a story. There used to be a director here years ago that we all know, Eddie Wilder. He was the regional director of special ed when I became a director, and he had this way about him. He was just a benevolent leader, and he was real simple in his approach. And I came in, I hadn't been working here very long. I've been here 7 years now. I hadn't been here very long, and I walked in and I said, I can't get our folks to dig into the IEP guidance document. There's a 90-some page IEP guidance document that was just updated in July. And if you don't know where that is, we've got it. I think we've got it linked to this PowerPoint presentation. But it's, you go to KDE, go to special education, you look for guidance documents. It's the IEP guidance document. It's everything you need to know about developing an IEP. Okay. And what Eddie said to me that day was, this is what you need to go back and tell your trainees. You are a special education professional now, and you better take it very seriously. And one of the first things you need to incorporate into your being is the knowledge of the IEP guidance document. I said, well, they don't want to read 94 pages. He said, well, you better tell them they're professionals and they better start reading that thing. Okay? So what I say to you is, we have all kinds of training here at KVEC that breaks every piece of that down. And we can come and we'll work with you. We have mentoring programs. We have all kinds of things that we can do to help you with that. So don't feel overwhelmed when you go back and they hand you a caseload of 20 if you're in high school, or they hand you a caseload of 15 at the elementary school, and you've got all these IEPs to develop and you don't know where to begin. We're going to give you an overview today, okay? We're going to start with the real simple, what is the purpose? So, and this is straight out of the guidance document. So we define the IEP as a written program for a student with a disability who's eligible to receive special education and related services. Special education has these elements: academics, functional behavior. When you talk about your Vineland and your adaptive behavior, those are things like communication functionally. Those are things like daily living skills. Those are things like socialization. Those are parts, as well as reading, math, writing. And then that other element is that maladaptive behavior. So those are the big pieces, right? And the IEP describes these students' strengths and needs and articulates measurable annual goals. Specially designed instruction related services and supplementary aids and services are required to address the educational needs of the student. Wow, what does that all mean? It's a deep subject, it really is. So, but it's not as deep as you think, and we can help you with that, okay? That's why we're here, and that's what we want to do. We're a service organization that seeks to help you figure out these things that are difficult. So the purpose. We want to ensure that the student with disability receives all services related to the disability. Sometimes we have to prioritize. If we have a student that has a mild mental disability, or we have a student that has other health impairment, or we have a student that has a specific learning disability, we have to determine what the disability is, and we have to tell how that disability impacts that student's work within, remember they're a regular ed student first, how that impedes their progress in that curriculum. Okay? So it's very, very important that we understand. Address deficits in the areas of academics, functional, and behavioral. Provide special designed instruction to work on goal attainment. So these are all purposes, all right? Brenda would say close gaps. We're gonna establish where that student is currently working in reading. They may be in the second grade. Remember, we said we've got to meet them where they are. It's got to be individualized. It's got to be unique to them. And it's got to provide some ambition in the goal. So when we talk about closing gaps, we have to first busy ourselves in determining through all that information that we get, what is their current level of functioning, and what is their baseline on a particular skill? Because the IEP is about skill attainment and growing skills, okay? And so, progress monitoring to close gaps and ensure fidelity of implementation, and then of course, post-secondary transition. How many high school teachers I have? We've had transition training just recently, didn't we? And we went through that. So that's a whole different focal point of the IEP when a student becomes 14, and then when a student becomes 16, there's other things that we have to do to ensure that we've done everything to remove barriers that exist academically and behaviorally and adaptive behaviorally so that they can have successful lives. We're going to transition them beyond high school. So that's the focal point there. So, the responsibility, we have a responsibility. The student's ARC is responsible for developing the IEP, for ensuring IEP implementation, for reviewing progress toward the measurable annual goals, and revising the IEP as appropriate. One of the things that we see lots of times, Brenda and I, we'll read a conference summary, okay? And it'll say the purpose of, on the notice, in your mind's eye, have you seen a notice? By a show of hands, have you seen an ARC notice? Everyone's seen those, okay? Okay, so when down that left-hand column, it says this is the purpose of the meeting. But then when we read the minutes, it says the purpose of the meeting is to do an annual review. Well, I think sometimes we imply things in special education, and it's not clear. But when we talk about annual review and developing, reviewing, and revising the IEP, that's exactly what we should be doing in the meeting. So we got to look at the last progress monitoring. We got to say where the kid is. We got to say what we're going to do new. Does the goal remain appropriate? Does the goal need to be changed? What instructional design are we going to put? What special design instruction are we going to do to close those gaps? Okay, so it's our responsibility to, and then parent input. We've got a brand new record review document. Now the record review document, not the guidance document. Remember I said KD's got a guidance document? The record review is a rubric that grades you on how well you do compliance. Okay? And one of the things that the Andrew case taught us, it kind of drive our legislation, or litigation I should say, that law, that Supreme Court case that came out of that says that we're not doing enough with parent involvement. We're not including the parent in the development of the IEP. So there's a place on the conference summary that asks for parent input or concerns, and this is what we typically get. The parent is worried that the student's not going to graduate. The parent is worried that the student is going to fail. The parent is worried that the student is being bullied. Okay, those are all important things, but we're leaving out the piece about developing the IEP. The Andrew case, we'll talk about it later, like I said, the Andrew case very clearly says that one of the procedural errors that those folks made that got that case all the way to the Supreme Court, and it changes about everything we do in special ed, the way we go about our business, it's changed pretty much everything in this country about how we look at it and how we focus on it. One of the big missing pieces was parent involvement, parent input into the development of IEP. So, what I'm going to say to you, if you don't get anything else from this training today, write this statement down. What do you think your child needs to be working on special? And what needs to be included in the IEP? And then you capture that open-ended question answer and you put it in the conference summary. Okay? Open-ended question, what do you think? Because parents have a lot to give if we'll just mind that a little bit. And let me tell you something else too. Another residual effect of having that parent respond to that open-ended question is that when they feel like they have some ownership of that document, they're going to be a much greater supporter of that document and your teaching in your classroom. So you kind of hook them, okay? Get them to feel relevant in that meeting, okay? Don't put them on a firing line. You got 4 people across here, and they're sitting over here in the hot seat. Don't do that. But put them around the table, get them some coffee, talk to them nice, develop a relationship, but then ask them that open-ended question every time you do an ARC meeting. What is it you think that your student needs, or your child needs to be working on in our class? And what do we need to include special in that IEP? Okay? They know what's going on with their kids. Okay? Now, I live in theory. Okay? I read lots of books. I listen to lots of podcasts. But I do teach a class up at Alice Lloyd. I still have my toe in there just a little bit in a classroom. Okay? But I'm not in the school. But I do remember what it was like to be in a public school. And I do remember that sometimes parents don't have interest in these kinds of things. So we have to do parent engagement things. And one of the things is call them, talk to them, let them know you care about their kid. And when you do that, you'll be surprised at how much more conducive they'll be to helping you develop this IEP. Huge part, there is a question on that rubric that grades your work that says, can we see that the parent had any part in the development of the IEP? And if you've not answered that question, you get a big no, okay, on that section. And that's one of the 4 major pieces that we'll talk about later today, okay? If you come to the Special Ed 101 that Brenda and I are going to do together. Brenda, you have anything to say right there on that?
Okay, so when he was talking, and I hate to interrupt him because he always has these good thoughts, and I want him to remember those as he goes through, but he can remember better than I can, I'll just be honest about it. But on the parent piece, it always says, or a bunch of them say, parent has no concern. I don't believe that. KDE don't believe that. That is just unreal to write that down there because they do have a concern. But because of what he said earlier, you know, here we are, the staff, and there's the parent.
Right.
They feel like they're in a firing squad and they're scared to death to open their mouth. So the parent has to learn to trust us because we are the ones that are in charge of the education. But yes, the parent knows about their child, or I hope they know about their child. So we need to make sure that we find something in there and talk to them about it openly, because I'm sure they have something in mind that they would like for us to work on. And it may be functional pieces, because that's the part that I'm finding that we're leaving out of our IEPs is the functional piece.
Sometimes they don't understand what you're asking. Like I just had this yesterday. I asked some questions to the parent and she was just, oh, what do you mean? You know what I'm saying? Like they just don't, you have to break it down.
And just like we were talking about in explicit instruction, sometimes our parents
They just don't.
they don't have those educational backgrounds, so we have to provide some.
Or they
Example.
special needs.
And here's the thing that I want to say to you, you want to be empathetic, because if you were sitting there where they're sitting, you would want someone to be nice and kind to you.
Kind of an example of 15
Yeah.
examples.
And you know, I was listening to Archer speak yesterday, and I love Archer, okay? These girls know, I've got my picture made with her and everything. Like, I got the book signed,
Sound lady.
the whole deal. She's my old lady crush. Tammy knows about her. I mean, she does. But she was talking about kindness. She was talking about we should be teaching our kids, along with those expectations, that routine that we're talking about, also comes behavioral expectations, right? You're going to be engaged. You're going to answer the question. You're not going to be a clown, okay? There's a place for that sometimes. We all love humor and we use it, and it's effective, but we want to think about empathy. We want to think about kindness, okay? And that's one thing that Eddie did for us, wasn't it? He taught us how to treat people. I learned so much from Eddie Wilder about how to treat all people, okay? And so, very, very important.
One of the things
piece.
I always did just too is, because my oldest was down, but to start out with telling the parent what their child can do. Instead of just
Absolutely.
saying these
that's
are all
an
their
element.
deficits and they can't do this, just tell, they're doing this, we're going to continue to work on this.
Positive gets you a long way, doesn't it? A glass that's half full will get you a lot further with the parent than one that's half empty. And sometimes you have to use the word relative strength, and you have to explain what that means. When you compare that student to themselves, you don't compare them to others in that classroom, you compare them to themselves. then you can say, these are strengths for your student, for your child. These are really, and that's not lying, that's telling the truth. It's relative to them, okay? And so that's something we'll talk about. If you take my full IEP training, or you take our full IEP training that Brenda and I have worked so hard on, you'll see in the development of strengths, we talk lots about relative strength, okay? Okay, so the IEP supports learning by providing access to the Kentucky academic standards. If you're talking about little ones, you're looking at early childhood standards. If ensuring the student will make progress in the general curriculum. Again, those pieces, educationally, academically, behaviorally, and functionally, addressing the student's other unique needs. Like making sure they have access to non-curricular activity within the school. Making sure that, we provide access, because they're all 504 students. All IEP students are also 504 students. Now, don't get that confused, okay? But that's the way the law works. It's a civil rights law that encapsulates everybody that has a disability. And so they have the right to have access, okay? Don't let anybody keep your kid from going on a field trip, okay? That's a no-no. Get you in trouble quicker than anything, all right? So they have the right to do these things. We have to find out how to include them in extracurricular and non-curricular activity, okay? So that's what that's talking about. Preparing the student for further education, training, and employment, and independent living. What is that? That's transition. That's transition. That last piece right there is transition at the high school level, starting at age 13, and some districts start at grade 6, as early as grade 6, developing that ILP and putting all that stuff together. Okay, let's go back here for a second. Okay, on this graphic right here, I want to do another engagement strategy with you. I want you all to take special factors here. Okay, that's a little bit more difficult when you've got some experience. I want you to take present levels, okay? And I want you guys to take measurable annual goals, okay? And I want you all to take, that's hard to see, specially designed. Let's leave that one out. Let's take supplementary aids and services. We'll come back to special design instruction at the end, okay? So we're going to take present levels, we're going to take measurable annual goals, special factors, and supplementary aids and services right now, okay? Now, what I want you to do, you've got devices, and they work here. I want you to look up on KDU's website the IEP Guidance document. And I want you to look for that section, okay? I want you to look for that section, okay? And then we'll come back and show you what an exemplar looks like around those 4 sections. So, remind me what I gave you. I gave you special factors. I almost said behavior. That's what goes with it, right? Present levels. I gave you all measurable annual goals, and I gave you all supplementary aids and services. SAS. You'll hear us talk about that acronym, okay? And measurable annual goals, and you all got present levels. Okay, so see if you can find that. See if you can see what it says about present levels. Jot some things down. Define what has to be in present level, okay? Talk to me about special factors. What are the special factors, and what do you have to do with those special factors? All right, and over here, I want you guys looking at what a measurable annual goal is. There's going to be, I'm going to give you a little scaffold here. There's going to be 6 components. So kind of focus around that, okay? And then supplementary aids and services, find what the definition of supplementary aids and services are, okay? Man, I'm stupid. Yeah, right. Okay. Let's do more of a think and jot and talk to one another quickly, okay? I want to kind of put you on a time constraint here. You got about 3 minutes to come up with your answer, okay? We'll get to it.
We got all these adverse effects.
So as you're putting your answers together, I want you to think about this. This is a screenshot from the guidance document, and it's a linear, but also a cyclical model. Okay? Linear means it starts from top and goes in a straight line to the bottom, right? Or vice versa. But as you notice down here at the bottom, it's a cycle too. That's why it's a process and not a plan. A plan is a one-time event. A program is a process that goes on. Okay? I'm going to scaffold you guys.
Oh, so you're
She's ready.
for that reason.
Sure.
So, yeah, so you probably.
Okay.
ARC.
We-
before. Yeah.
We're gonna run out of time
Figure all that out because of.
if we don't pull it together. So let's start with present level because that's the first thing that you'll do. Okay? We're going to start with present level in just about, we're going to give you 1 more minute to write. 1 more minute and we'll start with present level. Also, I want you to think about response here, okay? One of the things that our goals of our lesson that we learned about in explicit instruction was we want lots of response from the work. So you're think about, you're having to think about it, you're having to write about it, you're having to talk about it, you're having to discuss it, rewrite it, and you're having to synthesize that information into an answer so that you can talk about kind of in bullet points really quickly what's going to go there, right? So that's kind of the process that we want you to think about in your classroom too. It's one effective way. Think, pair, share on crack is what I say sometimes, right? Okay. The ladies in the middle have the floor. Will you guys rise and deliver for me? Heather, Phyllis, and Jessica. Heather, Phyllis, and Jessica, rise. Okay, who's going to speak for this group this time? All right, Jessica's going to speak, and she's going to talk about what's required in present level. Okay?
In present levels, you're going to always have to have your strength, your area of need, your baseline data, and your adverse effect.
Okay.
Compared to other same age years.
Okay.
Denny, can I say something?
Sure.
She had just said too, when she saw this, she was like, this is so detailed. The ones that I've looked at is like 2 sentences.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
has to have.
It's hard to do in
these
2
parts.
sentences.
Yeah, there's no way. That's what I told her.
Okay, you guys can sit down. Okay, here's what I want to say to you. I heard her say strengths, I heard her say needs and concerns, and I heard her say baseline and adverse effect. Those are the 4 elements that you have to have. Now, I would like to grow that baseline piece to include all types of data. You're going to bring in progress data, you're going to bring in different types of test scores, assessments. You're going to look at the most recent state and district tests, but you're going to synthesize all through that information and you're going to determine what the student needs right now. For the next year, we're going to work on reading comprehension because all the test scores point to that. So, and you're going to determine how you're going to work on it. Is it going to be fluency? Is it going to be phonics? What is it you're going to work on in reading that's going to improve reading comprehension? And that's a discrete skill. And that's where you have to probe and get the baseline. If it's a brand new kid, initial referral, like you will have lots of those in elementary, what grade levels do you work with now? First and second. So you're going to be one of those that's going to have tons of that. So you're going to be looking at initial referrals and you're going to be saying, okay, does the RTI information tell us enough that we can progress monitor a specific skill on a discrete skill? Or do we have to take that discrete skill and do we have to probe it ourselves and determine what level that student's on? So the whole goal of present level is to tell the story of the student and to determine what level they're working on. Go back to our purpose. We're moving kids from that level. They're behind, right? Or they wouldn't be in special education. They got a disability. How that disability impacts is our adverse effect. But that score is important. And if we read a present level, Brenda can tell you, the State Department will tell you this. If we read a present level and you got a bunch of statements, but no percentages, you got a non-compliant IEP. Okay? So important to understand that. So with that reading fluency piece, the kid can read this many words in a minute. What's his baseline on the instructional level that he is? If he's in the 4th grade and his instructional level is 2nd grade, then that's where you work it, right? Okay, enough about that. Let's go here, special factors. Talk to me about special factors and what they are and how they fit in the IEP.
Okay.
This is the second big piece, okay?
Okay, some of the special factors that you have to take in consideration will be their behavior, which will be the social emotional part of it, vision and hearing, and speech and OT, which we call related services,
Okay.
right? And then of course your academic.
Okay.
And then it's important to develop goals
I forgot to make you
that
stand up.
addresses.
I forgot to make you stand up. Stand up.
Oh. It's
Everybody stand
important.
up. Everybody stand up. Yeah.
It's important though to develop goals that relate to those because you want your kids to be on a level playing field just like a regular student.
For you new folks, okay, listen to this. If a student has a low adaptive behavior, you have to develop a plan through positive behavior intervention and put some strategies in that special factor place, okay? If you mention it as a concern over here, you have to address it somewhere through the IEP, okay? So up there in your mind's eye on that second page of the IEP, when it says special factors behavior, you mark yes if that student has a 70 or below on that Vineland, and you address that with PBIS, okay? So you have to do that. And it goes back to what their disability is. You can't have a kid that has an intellectual disability that doesn't have some not maladaptive behavior, but adaptive behavior issues. So that's one piece that you got to be in tune with. And the other thing that lots of people do, lots of times they'll say the kid has to have assistive technology on the test, but then they don't address it in special factors. So make sure the subject and the verb agree there, okay? So if you mention that they're going to have a handheld calculator over here, that's a special factor over here. They're going to need some assistive technology throughout their year, not just on the test. You see what I'm saying? You got to make those kind of match up. But that's the two trouble spots. Thank you all.
All right, I'm going to interrupt right there. Everybody has a Chromebook in your school.
Right.
Regular ed and special ed students. Okay? So that's not,
That's not
Special.
special.
that's not special. But if they use the speech to text or the text to speech, that is special. So make sure.
If they need that, you have to address it, right? It's a need, it's a special factor. Plus, you need to make those accommodations that you're choosing for the state test. If you're saying they're going to use special technology, then you should be using that on a daily basis as a special factor. Measurable annual goals, what'd you find out? Stanley, please.
That your visual annual goals are basically made up of 6 components.
Okay,
The first one being your audience,
Uh-huh.
who is it going for?
okay. So that's the student's name.
The next one is the behavior.
Okay.
What observable action will the student perform? What will the sound be? Your third one is circumstance. This describes the instructional material, circumstances used to teach and measure the behavior.
Okay.
The next is the degrees and criteria. How well must the student perform at the skill to be considered mastery?
So that's your percentage and that's your 3 out of 4. Okay?
Then you go into evaluation method to measure. How will the implementer measure the student's progress? The
Perfect.
curve or,
Yes.
and then frequency of data collection. How frequently will the data be collected? Daily, weekly, twice a week? Never use the word bi-weekly.
Very good. All right. All right. You guys, supplementary aids and services. Stand and deliver. Who's talking?
We said that it's basically what the student needs in order to learn, and it's the strategies that they use in the general ed environment, like visual aids, prompts, scribe, reader, any kind of manipulative.
Anything that the student needs to assist in accessing the general curriculum and meeting the goals, meeting the standards, right? Anything that the student needs. So, one of the things you can do with an IEP, conceptually, is you can always do more than's written on that IEP for that student. It's called incidental benefit. They can learn from one another, they can learn from regular ed, they can do all kinds of things. What we want to caution you is if you're not going to do it for the student though, don't put it on there, okay? Don't put a big laundry list of things that you can't possibly accomplish. Be careful with that, okay?
It's documented.
You have to, yeah. So, great job. You guys can sit. Let's just take a look at some things here. And you'll have this, we'll send this to you. You have on your table an IEP example. It's like an exemplar. Now, there's no such thing as a perfect IEP. So there might be some things that have not been updated, okay, with the new regulations in place and all that. Or the new record review document, I should say. But the idea here is if you mention here that a student's on the 4th grade instructional level and his baseline is 40, then over here on the measurable annual goals, you're going to have a reading goal that is greater than 40%. Okay? So you've got to make the annual goal match what's written as a baseline here. So if you mention it as a need or concern, then you ran a baseline because you probed it or you brought it ahead from the recent progress monitor or the last year's IEP, then you need to make sure that you have a goal that is the same as that and it has a target percentage that's higher than the one listed in the baseline. So you could say something like the student's reading comprehension on the 2nd grade level is his instructional level. Okay, that's where he currently feels some struggle, some productive struggle, if you will. Okay, it's ambitious for him. He really is independent only on the 1st grade level, right? He can only get 90% of the things correct consistently on the 1st grade level. Now he's on the 2nd grade. We probe him. He gets 20% of the things right on that. Then when you go to the measurable annual goal, you've got to have a percent. 20% of reading and comprehension here on the 2nd grade, but we're going to try to get him to 50%. Mind you, it doesn't always have to say 80%. That's a myth, okay? Progress monitoring on goals are not grades, okay? Those are two separate things. Grades are how the student is doing in the access and the performance in the curriculum. Progress monitoring is on the goal and how well they're closing that gap in that particular skill area, okay? All right, so let's go on. Let's look here. Here's consideration of special factors. You can see where we marked yes because the kid has a low vinyl and we put the PBIS stuff in, okay? All right, and then quickly we'll just go through these. There's a measurable annual goal and it's got all 6 components. It's got the student's name. His name is Johnny. He will solve. He's going to solve or compute mathematics problems, okay? So that's his verb. And then given a math computation program with 20 multiplying and dividing problems within 100 is his circumstance. And then 80% accuracy over, oh, I've got that 80% accuracy in there, don't I? Daggone. All right, so 80% accuracy over 3 consecutive weeks. I don't really like the way that's written. That's a little bit of a, it should be 3 out of 4 consecutive trials. Okay, and that would be the degree criterion, and then measured by weekly math computation frequency count. This is a method of measurement. In order to progress monitor correctly, you've got to get a correct method of measurement in your goal. Okay, so that's just one way of looking at that. Sometimes it's important to provide non-examples, and this is a really good non-example of how, like if Brenda was grading this, she would mark off on the degree criteria. for sure, right? And so, but you have a drop-down box here for method of measurement. You've got 4 different kinds: direct, indirect, curriculum-based, and authentic. We usually hover around curriculum-based and direct and indirect, okay? Stay away from authentic because you got to do 2 of those. Now, one of the things that I'd say to you is when you choose direct measures or you choose curriculum-based measures are really fluency probes, okay, for the most part. And then everything else that you do academically can be turned into a frequency count or an event recording, okay? You have, maybe that's for, well, that's in progress monitor. We'll come back to that. And then you see the display of special design instruction. That's what the special ed teacher is responsible for doing. That's intentional, different, designed to meet the goal. Okay? You need to ask yourself every day, what did I do special for my kids? And what did I do to work on the goal? And if I didn't do anything, I'm not doing my job. Okay? You need to ask yourself those questions. What did I do special for my kids that's different from regular ed instructions? And and you need to have, if you go into a class and you're doing co-teaching, you've got 6 or 7 students in there, you need to have their goals written down at a glance so that you know what goals it is you need to be working on during that period. Because you will lose your mind if you don't know what's going on, right? And you can't be effective. And what you've got to get away from is just accommodating. Oh, I'm just doing reading for this kid. Or, oh, I'm just going to write for this kid. I'm just going to make sure he has access. That's accommodation. We've got to teach kids something explicitly, just like we talked about in here, okay? And we need to plan our lessons. We need to carve out our niche in those classrooms, okay?
All right. So if you look at that goal, it's got frequency count. Now, that is a way that we have to count that. But what are you going to be giving your students? You're going to give them a worksheet or something? It's going to be probes? A lot of people get confused over this.
That's right.
And they put probes in there, which is fine, but
It's curriculum
the way you're going to get that is you're going to have to do frequency count to count how many got right. You see what I'm saying?
It's all going to turn into that one type of data, percentage, right?
So if you put the probes in there, you're going to have to put the curriculum base, because that's what that part is. Probes match the curriculum base. But when you're doing this, you are doing a frequency count to see how many got right.
Right.
And that would be the direct measure.
We'll talk about that in progress. Brenda and I are going to do progress monitoring later. We'll talk about that a little bit. We'll give you a sheet, and it kind of simplifies progress monitoring a little bit, okay? What goes in intra-campus goal monitoring, and I would encourage you to use that, okay? Here's the supplementary acts and services. We've got a big, long laundry list here. We violated our own precept, all right? But we could probably do all this. You see, you've got reader and scribe there, we've got use of calculator and guided notes. Those are what the student needs to have access, okay? There's the accommodations that we marked. Those need to be in keeping with what disability. We don't need to have kids getting readers if they don't have a disability in reading. If they don't have low scores in reading, okay? You have to check that out. It has to be in the lesson plan. It has to be something we're getting consistently, okay, as an accommodation in that class. Program modifications and supports. This is what the type of training that you would get for us. Let's say you had a kid in your class that had an auditory trainer, has a hard time hearing. Well, you don't know how to use that auditory trainer. What's the support you need? You need training in how to use that auditory trainer. That's what goes here. And then the other thing is program modifications, which we gloss over. Anybody in here teach FMD students? Okay, so you've got FMD students, so program modification is you're going to impact what's learned, right? So you're going to modify the learning there. You're going to bring it down to a level where the student can gain some measure of success from it, okay? Least restrictive environment. That's to the maximum extent appropriate. Students are educated with the non-disabled peers to the maximum extent appropriate, okay? Meeting them where they are, unique circumstances. We've got to have placement options available for them. Remember, IEP drives your placement decision. So whatever needs they have on that IEP is going to determine where you deliver it. Placement, special education is not, it's a service, it's not a location, okay? So you can't decide everybody's going to go to the resource room and get IEPs. You have to let the IEP needs drive where the kid gets serviced. If they can thrive with their non-disabled peers to the maximum extent appropriate, you should have them in the regular classroom in a co-teaching model, right? So that's least restrictive environment in a nutshell. And then your service page, when you write your least restrictive environment statement, it asks you to tell how much the student is not going to be with their non-disabled peers. So you got to put a blurb in there saying, hey, this is the content, classes that they're going to have, this is the special education they're going to have. You need to make it match you. And if you're getting 20 minutes of general ed setting for social studies, for social skills work, that's how you break that down. But this piece right here has to match what the statement says, okay? I know I'm throwing a lot at you. Extended school year, it has to do, if you don't have progress monitoring data, you can't answer this question. And it basically comes down to, can the student get back to a point that they were before they left at the break within 6 weeks? If they can't, they're a candidate. But you have to have progress data to do that, okay? We always give progress reports as often as we give report cards to non-disabled kids. Okay? So very quickly, that's what we do there. And we'll leave the special design instruction for another day. We're going to have a fall conference. A lot of you will have to come to the fall conference here. And we'll talk about special design instruction at length. But just remember, it's what you do special for that kid. It's intentional, it's planned, it's designed to meet the needs of that student. It's different than what they get in differentiated instruction, and it's designed to meet that goal. Okay? Thank you.